Hello and welcome to episode 91 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. My name is Sigmund Judge, and I'm happy to say that I'm joined once again by my co-host, a new member of the Dad Club, Devon Dundee. So many congratulations to you and Catherine. How are you both doing, and how's young Noah?
Thanks, Sigmund. Everyone's doing good. We're home. We're happy and healthy. Noah's growing like a weed. We're even, keeping track of his weight changes day to day, growth charts, all that fun stuff. And it's just been a really special time of life. So we're loving it. And thanks to you and thanks to everyone for the love and support. It's been awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Although, with some technical difficulties. A quick apology to both Roman and Sam, who were my guests for the last two episodes. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have seen that those episodes published last weekend after some delays, only to be taken down because all they were static, and for some reason we have a few issues that I'm trying to resolve with our podcast editing suite of choice. Hopefully we can bring them back from the dead. But let's talk about everything coming up on this week's episode. We take a brief look back at season 2 of the Afterparty and its killer reveal. We give our predictions for next week's big Apple event. But we start with our highlight, new Apple original thriller series, The Changeling. Apollo and Emma's love story is a fairy tale until Emma mysteriously vanishes. Bereft, Apollo finds himself on a death-defying odyssey through a New York City he didn't know existed.
When I got to Brazil, she told me I had 3 wishes. When it falls off my wrist, those 3 wishes will come true. Do not cut it.
Where is my wife?
This is based on the novel by Victor Lavelle, who also executive produces the series and narrates, created by Kelly Marcel, starring the amazing and magnetic Lakeith Stanfield, alongside Clark Becko, Adina Porter, and Jared Abramson. We were promised a fairy tale, but having seen the series in its entirety, was it what you expected after reading the synopsis all those months ago, Devon?
I have to say it is a lot darker even than I expected based on the synopsis and the trailer that we saw just a few weeks ago. This series really gets deep into issues around early parenthood and the struggles that come there, which, kind of living right now, thankfully not in quite such an extreme fashion. But yeah, even the synopsis, as you were reading it, it says that Emma mysteriously vanishes. Those 3 words are doing a lot of work for what actually happens in the series. There are some really dark and mysterious circumstances around her disappearance that leave Apollo in a really, really dark place. And we get to see his journey out of that darkness. This is being described as a fairy tale. I'd say it's more Grimm's fairy tale than a Disney fairy tale. Magic is not a good thing in this series, I'll tell you that much. And there are fantastical elements to it, but it is also very much rooted in reality and in the reality, like I said, of young parenthood and the struggles that people go through there. So we've got Apollo, played by Lakeith Stanfield. He's a very interesting character. He's got a lot of nuance to him. He's a rare book salesman, which is a really cool job. It's actually interesting to see him, how he does that work and how it plays out throughout the series. He falls in love, of course, with a librarian named Emma, played by Clark Becko, who also has just an incredible performance. She has so much to do in this series, and she does it so well. Apollo's main goal in life is just to be a good husband and a good dad. And I think that's a desire that a lot of people can relate to. And it kind of goes back into his own family history, which the series does a good job of kind of contextualizing where that desire comes from for him. And all that kind of does end up playing into his story as well. He and Emma, they fall in love, but Emma goes on a trip. She moves away. And while she's away, she comes across this mysterious woman by a lakeside who ties a string around her wrist, tells her to make 3 wishes, and tells her she cannot cut the string until it falls off naturally. And it's just this bizarre experience that she has, and she ends up laughing it off, but I think that's more of a way to cover up her discomfort with what happened and to kind of move past it. So when she comes home and she and Apollo are talking about her trip and what happened, Apollo makes this what seems like a suave move maybe in the moment. He says, "You don't need this string to make your wishes come true. I'll make your wishes come true." And he cuts the string. And of course, that's the moment that everything changes.
Yeah, I mean, this moment, my heart sunk, right? Because we have an idea based on the trailer what's going to happen, right? And based on the context that we get up until that point, what I think is really interesting about this show is how it tackles generational trauma, and that's beyond family, but we get hints very early on what that trauma actually means for people that basically made their way to America for the first time. There's a lot going on here that I feel like you'll have to explore beyond your first initial take. Would you agree?
Definitely. It's one that it doesn't necessarily play out in chronological order, especially the first couple of episodes. There's a lot of kind of going back and forth. And like you said, that very first narration of the ship going across the ocean, that's something that's setting the stage for the story, but it does take some time to see exactly how that all ties in. So yeah, it is one that you're going to kind of have to think on and kind of piece together as you go, but I think that's part of the fun of it as well. It's a modern fairy tale, right? It's this really interesting and fantastical story, but it's told in a modern way. And I do have to shout out the narration by Victor Laval. Very cool to see him get to narrate the adaptation of his own story, and he does a really great job with it. And it just has a very surreal kind of vibe to it from the very beginning, thanks to his voice work. For me personally, the biggest connection throughout these first 3 episodes, of course, is with Apollo. It's very interesting watching this as a new parent, seeing his experience. But I think that innate desire to be a good partner and a good parent is one that a lot of people can relate to, and it makes him a character that we can really root for and want to see good things for, even as we see him struggling with the situation that he finds himself in.
This show has some really familiar chops, I think, of early Sam Raimi and The Evil Dead and Drag Me to Hell. There are these psychological elements to it that really marry up with this show. And I know when we talked about the synopsis and after the trailer, I was like, oh, this is almost going to fill the void of M. Night Shyamalan's Servant. This actually, I feel, is more akin actually to Shining Girls from last year, with the back and forth, especially in the first few episodes. And it has that heaviness and that foreboding to it. But it's a show that between every episode, it's going to ruminate with you and you're going to think upon it. I don't know if this is a show for everyone, but what I will say is, personally, it's a show that I found thrilling and probably the most ambitious storytelling from an Apple original this year. Of course, one of the themes in this is the mental health issues that can come along with new motherhood. I was wondering if you watched this alongside your wife, and what I was surprised by was, honestly, on release, that there is no kind of viewer discretion warnings, because I feel that this could be quite triggering. There are some moments, especially involving a mobile phone, which are actually quite shocking.
So yes, we did watch it together, and we talked about how strange of an experience it is to see such a different experience of new parenthood than what we're having. I agree with you. I was surprised about the lack of any kind of warning about, depictions of postpartum depression and some of the implied violence, not on screen, but, implied violence that does take place throughout the series. But while it does have some grounding in some of the emotional experiences, it is still very fantastical, which kind of helps you disconnect from reality a little bit there.
Absolutely, and the fantastical elements are enhanced by an incredible sound presentation. I think this is one that's also enhanced with the lights off. So my question is this a lights on or lights off viewing for you, Devon?
We had a rule in our house. We could not watch this one unless the sun was up. Couldn't watch it too close to bedtime because it is scary. Maybe horror's a little bit strong, but it definitely does throw you a little bit. So yeah, we watched this one while the sun was up for us. But I could definitely see how it'd be more fun with the lights off. But whether you watch with the lights off or on, the Changeling's first 3 episodes are available now across all of your screens, now on Apple TV+.
From one Apple original to the Apple original, of course, this Tuesday coming is Apple's Wonderlust event, and you'll be able to stream it in 4K, HDR, and spatial audio, as always, via the TV app, as well as YouTube. Obviously, we're expecting iPhones. We're expecting so much from this event because, unlike most years where we've had multiple events, beyond WWDC, which obviously had some hardware, we haven't had anything, I'd say, for the mainstream Apple fan. And so there could be lots and lots for us to look forward to. There are some things that are a given at this event, though, I think. Obviously, new iPhones. USB-C is almost certain. And I'm sure we'll get different updates for different products. My question to you is, do you think there's going to be an October event along with a September event? Because if there isn't, we could be seeing more than we're even expecting in our predictions this year.
Based on the rumors that I've read, I think we probably will see either an event in October or at least, like a press release event, some new Macs. The M3 chip seems to be pretty close, so I would imagine they'd probably want to make a big deal about that. So I'm anticipating something next month. Personally, and you'll tell this from my picks, I'm thinking this event is probably going to be pretty focused on iPhone and Apple Watch. That's what most of my points are depending on, at least.
Okay, well, we've done this a few times before. I believe I'm just one ahead at this point in time. So this could be the one that takes you in line with me, and then we'll probably take over because I know I've got a few out there picks, even beyond our out there picks. Here are the rules. 5 picks each, worth 1 point, followed by our out there pick, worth 3 points. So an opportunity to take over right at the last hurdle. Let's start with our first pick, and that will come from me. Now, obviously, there is a massive focus on iPhones during the September event. But I also think this could be a massive focus for the mainstream to really look at Apple's original lineup come the end of this year. And especially with all of the other streaming services increasing their prices and people questioning the value and the amount of awards and high ratings for Apple's original series and films, both that have already been this year, and lots to look forward to at the end of this year, including Apple's original films Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon. I think, as my first pick, we will see one or more Apple originals get keynote time during this event. What do you think?
Ooh, I love this because, of course, we're big fans of Apple's originals, also big fans of Apple's whole services division. I would love to see services get some time during the keynote as well. I could definitely see maybe the morning show. It launches the next day. So I could definitely see them giving that a shout out. Or Lessons in Chemistry with Brie Larson. That's a big October launch. Either of those on the series side, I could definitely see getting a shout out. Or any, of course, of the huge films. Huge film slate, massive film slate Apple has coming this fall. So I like this one. As usual, Sigmund, we're competing against each other, but I think we're also rooting for some of each other's picks as well because these picks are a lot of fun. Are you ready for my first one?
Absolutely, and I feel like we're going in order of what we can expect or what we hope to expect during the keynote.
Oh, yeah. My first prediction is that a new USB-C AirPods Pro case will be released, but the earbuds themselves will remain unchanged. This is a little bit selfish on my part because I just bought AirPods Pro 2 last year. If they come out with like an H3 chip with some awesome new features, I'm going to be super jealous, and of course I'm going to have to upgrade. So I'm hoping that the earbuds themselves don't change, but we are hearing that the AirPods line is going to be moving to USB-C alongside the iPhone, starting with AirPods Pro. So they'll probably be selling the cases alone for those like you and me who already have AirPods Pro 2nd generation. And then I imagine for like the retail units, they'll just all switch to USB-C going forward so you don't have to buy a new case.
Yeah, something to keep in mind though for those that may panic. should this happen, and I think it will, is that you can use a QI wireless charger to charge your AirPods as well.
Oh yeah, or MagSafe.
Oh, which means that you don't necessarily have to rush out and replace your case. But hey, it's nice to have that option. Carrying along the AirPods story, I do think we'll probably get a demo of the features that are coming in the new OS update and get a little bit of a recap for the mainstream there. But, you know, the AirPods line refreshes every 3 years. And whilst I may be a little bit early on this, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this just makes more sense in terms of Apple's storytelling, and the switch to USB-C and everything else that's coming, the one piece of the puzzle from the AirPods line that doesn't make a lot of sense and is kind of outdated at this point are the AirPods that I'm wearing right now, the AirPods Max. And so I'm going to predict that the AirPods Max line gets a hardware update. There are a number of things that just aren't there right now, that even the new Beats headphones, which already are getting price reductions, I think it's time for at least AirPods Max to get an announcement. Maybe not available until October, but I think they're going to be announced at this event, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'd love to see USB-C, headphone jack, the H2 chip come to AirPods Max. I've heard some people say they'd like to see the stainless steel get replaced with titanium to make them a little bit lighter. I don't know exactly how that would work or look, but it's kind of a cool idea. Of course, it's kind of irrelevant to me because my beloved AirPods Max had to be shipped back to Apple because of comfort issues, and I have missed them ever since. I definitely feel the FOMO when I see people wearing them and talking about them. And honestly, if there's a second generation, I'm probably going to have to try them out just to see if comfort-wise there's some kind of change that will make them work for me. But enough about my FOMO. Let's talk about your FOMO a little bit, Sigmund, because you've said before how much you're eyeing the Apple Watch Ultra over the last year. Mm-hmm. And that leads to my pick that the Apple Watch Ultra will be offered in a darker finish than the current model.
Okay.
I don't know for sure if they're going to do like a full Apple Watch Ultra 2. Possibly we'll see like a new processor or something in it, but I think really what's missing in the Ultra line right now is just some kind of color options, because I know a lot of people who want the Ultra but don't necessarily love that kind of unstained titanium color just as an accessory. They want something darker. Personally, I like my watches to be a little bit darker than that really bright titanium look, so I'd be interested in a darker finish. And I would love to see maybe different accent colors as well. They've got that orange color that I know a lot of people love, but maybe on a darker finish they could go with like a blue or a green maybe? I don't know.
I have to be very honest. That is the one thing that put me off the Ultra last year. Alongside its size, the orange accent I don't think works with everything. Doesn't work with all outfits. We're hearing, and we'll be talking about it a little bit later, about an action button coming to the iPhone, maybe. That's not going to have an orange accent button, or at least I hope it won't. So it kind of makes sense on the second generation that maybe the orange accent disappears. I wasn't confident enough to put this as a pick. The other thing that kind of put a lot of people off was just the sheer scale of the device that's going to be on your wrist. And my question is, do you think we'll see a smaller version of the Ultra this year? Or is Ultra also kind of defined in just the size of the device? What do you think?
That's a tough one. A lot of things with Apple, to get the best version, you have to go with the biggest one. Think about the iPad. The 12.9-inch iPad. To get that beautiful screen, you've got to go with the bigger size. But they've also got a new trend of offering multiple technologies in different sizes, like the MacBook Air now, being available in multiple sizes too. And the Apple Watch has always come in multiple sizes. So I don't know. I would love to see it, but I don't know if this is the year for it.
All right. Pick 3 for me. And this is going down iPhones because I think, of course, we will get some time for the watches. We'll get time for AirPods and services. But this is really all about the phones. And my pick is that all iPhone models will include a dynamic island, will include larger screens, and USB Type-C. Because we're almost certain on 2 of them, I wanted to combine all 3 just to make sure I wasn't cheating too much and being too obvious here. The interesting thing, I think, in terms of this pick is probably the larger screens, because we have seen very, very subtly the decrease in bezels year upon year, especially with the Pro phones. And we then also see that step down every couple of years to the normal iPhones. And so I think whatever iPhone you go for this year is going to be a step up, especially if it's been a couple of years since your last upgrade. Based on that, what do you think in terms of Dynamic Island? Has it really benefited you over the last year? Is it something that you're looking forward to seeing come to the lower end iPhones if it does indeed happen?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Dynamic Island. I've loved it over the past year, even just for its now playing functionality, because I listen to a lot of podcasts. And so having those controls right there and the artwork up in the top of my screen, I love that. But I've gained an even deeper appreciation for the Dynamic Island recently with an app called Mango Baby, which is kind of like the health app, but for your newborn, and you keep track of, diaper changes and feedings and all that, and it makes great use of the Dynamic Island as well. So at any given time, I'm now using multiple pieces of the Dynamic Island for different things, whether it's Mango Baby, now playing, timers, all kinds of different stuff. So yeah, I'm obsessed with the Dynamic Island. I love it, and I'm really happy to see it coming down, hopefully to the entire lineup this year, so that more developers will be encouraged to take advantage of it for an even bigger audience. Are you using the Dynamic Island much?
I'll be honest, I'm not using the Dynamic Island as much as I thought I would, just because a lot of the apps never really integrated it well, and when I do get an integration within an app, is a pleasant surprise. The thing I'm kind of most looking forward to is USB Type-C, but I think that could come with its own predicaments for Apple, purely because USB Type-C, if you've got a USB Type-C accessory, you're going to think that it's going to work with it, right? It's going to work with iPhone because it's not a proprietary Lightning port, but USB Type-C. So I think that could maybe be a problem, but could also be really exciting for the future of iOS and iPhone. Maybe we'll be getting into that a little bit later. But of course, we've talked about it once before. I think we're about to talk about it again. What is your next pick?
Kind of sticking with the kind of I/O of the new iPhones, I have a prediction about MagSafe. I believe it will be updated with faster charging speeds. We've been at, 15 watts for a while now, but the iPhone battery continues to grow and battery life, continues to be more and more necessary. And so I'd like to see MagSafe jump up maybe to 20. I don't know. The charging bricks that Apple sells now are 20 watts, so that would take full advantage of it. That may be the highest they would go unless they're going to put out a new charging brick as well. But yes, I think MagSafe has been out for 3 years now, and I'd love to see it continue to improve as we, hopefully eventually get to see it take on data and other functions as well. But even just seeing an increase in charging speed would at least show that it's being invested in and continuing to develop, which I think would be great.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to talk about later on in our predictions. Let's switch it up a little bit. What is your number 4 pick this year?
Well, from speed of charging now to speed of data, I'm predicting that the iPhone 15 Pro will feature a Thunderbolt connection specifically for quick transfer of large video files. We talked about this before. The iPhone camera can capture some incredible videos and ProRAW photos and all kinds of just these huge files, but it's been difficult to get those off of the phone quickly. I think AirDrop has probably been the fastest way to do it.
It's painful at this point.
So I think the Pro phones, probably not the lower tier. That's why I'm just predicting the Pro phones will, with the switch to USB-C, also integrate Thunderbolt so that you can get those files off real quick and get back to work with your Pro video iPhone setup.
I'm 100% with you on this one. My 4th pick for this year is that the largest iPhone model will include a camera with extra zoom, demoed at a MOS game, maybe for that synergy. I'm really, really looking forward to this. I'm not sure how it's going to work, because obviously when you think of a telescopic lens, you think of a lens that comes out of the phone, And whilst that would look weird, I feel that those that upgrade their phones every year will have noticed that the camera bump gets a little bit bigger each time. And maybe that is in part to get us used to the look of what to expect. And I'm not expecting something where you can't practically lay your phone down, but I think there's space for maybe just a tiny little bit more of a bump, especially if you have a MagSafe wallet on at the back or a new case. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think a few years ago with the iPhone and the night shots, where you were able to get some incredible shots of stars on a clear evening, something that I love doing every time I go and visit friends on the coast, I think maybe this could go a little further, and maybe we can see something where we're able to shoot up into space. That would be my dream. I've always wanted to actually take a picture of the moon, and it never has turned out that great, even with all of the different iterations in technology. Beyond that, I think this is going to add yet more tools to the arsenal of an iPhone filmmaker, whether amateur or professional. So that's what I'm going with this year, and I think this is probably one of the standouts for a possible upgrade.
Most definitely. I think if they could get like a 5x or a 6x zoom in the iPhone camera, people would just flock to it. You're at an event and you want to get a good photo of, your favorite player at a game, or if it's your child at some kind of event that they're doing, or whatever else. There's just so many times when you want a good picture of something, but you can't get close enough to it. Right now with the Pro phones, with the 3X, you can take the picture and maybe crop it if you really want to. But having double the range on that would just be incredible, and I think a lot of people would go up to the top-tier iPhone just for that lens. So that's a good fourth pick, but we need to hear your last pick. What is pick number 5 for you, Sigmund?
All right, pick 5 before my out there pick is that the action button will be reserved for the higher end iPhone models. And I say this because it was reserved for the Apple Watch Ultra last year. For those that don't know, the action button is this button that can be programmed to do certain actions from apps that implement it, or even shortcuts, I believe. So it really is user customizable. I've already been thinking about how I could use this alongside my Apple TV viewing, and whilst everyone will find out and will be talking about this more in the weeks to come, tvOS 17 and FaceTime is super, super easy. I want to be able to literally press a button, or maybe, as we'll talk about in a moment, connect to something and something to automatically happen. I think that could be really, really helpful. And maybe also then that action button can change based on the focus mode that you're in. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm really, really excited for and hoping for. And yeah, I just can't see the action button coming to all phones, because this is what Apple do and it makes sense. What do you think?
You make a good point about the Apple Watch Ultra having that button and not the Apple Watch Series 8. It's one of those things that Apple likes to do where they'll develop something for the Pro version or the higher end version of a product, and then a couple years later kind of let it trickle down. So I could definitely see them doing that with the action button on the iPhone as well. To be honest, I think most people who would be interested in it are on the higher end iPhones at this point. People who are really into shortcuts and automation and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think this is a good call. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it come down maybe next year or the next, depending on what kind of feature mix they have going for the next couple years of iPhones. But this year, to make a big deal about it on the higher end phones, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Now, Devon, we've covered so much already in all of these picks. I can't imagine what's left. So what have you got for your 5th pick?
I'm going to go with a naming pick, which is always a bit of a gamble with Apple, because you just never know what they're going to name something, and they don't tend to let that information out early. But based on some of their previous naming schemes and some of the trends that we've seen in some of their products, I'm going to predict that the biggest iPhone this year will be called Ultra instead of Pro Max.
Oh, okay. Interesting. if the naming convention changes for the biggest phone, do you think we'll see a change in the design convention compared to everything else, like we did with the Apple Watch Ultra compared to the Apple Watches?
I don't think it's going to be a design change necessarily. I think the Pro and the Ultra will probably have very similar designs, obviously, other than the size. I think the big difference is going to be that telephoto camera and the ability to have that extra zoom. I personally think that's enough to kind of separate it out, at least in Apple's mind, and make it a different line. I also just like the name better, so honestly, maybe it's a bit of just me trying to put it out there and make it happen. It also does set up the line eventually, maybe, for the Pro and the bigger Pro or Ultra to separate more over time. I don't think that's the plan this year necessarily, but I do think that camera difference is enough for me to give it a different name.
Okay. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. Again, I think it's risky, but it would not surprise me should this happen. But going from a pick that's risky to one that is completely out there, what have you got for us this year? What's the one that you're pinning your, remember, 3 points on? I'm excited to hear about this.
I'm getting nervous as I'm about to say it because it feels so permanent, and that's a big risk to take. But I'm going to put my 3 points on one of my favorite Apple products of all time, the iPad mini. And I'm going to predict that an updated iPad mini will be announced at this event. It's been 2 years since it's been updated. Usually the iPads are on kind of a 1.5-year cycle. Obviously the mini's always been on its own trajectory. And so it's hard to predict, but I think it's time. I think it's time for the iPad mini to get an update. I'd love to see it put on an M-series chip. I don't know if they could fit it in that small of a body or not. Usually the iPad mini follows whatever the iPad Air does. And so the iPad Air is on the M1. I would love to see an iPad mini with M1 that I could hook up to an external display and have Stage Manager and have it as my tablet, but also my desktop. I think that'd be incredible. And the more I talk, the more this sounds like wish casting, Sigmund. But I'm still going for it. New iPad mini at this event.
I'd love for it to happen. I think you're a little bit early on this one. My only iPad is an iPad mini. I love it. I love it to pieces. I think it's the perfect iPad for me that works alongside my Mac workflow these days. I'd be interested to know what the update would have beyond maybe a chip update. Yeah, I'm excited about the possibility of an iPad mini. I think that's going to come next year. Maybe October if we're lucky. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, not a lot of activity on the iPad hardware front this year. Really anything, right, so far. So this may not be the event for it. Like you said, maybe it will be next month. But that's what I'm putting my 3 points on, whether you think I'm throwing them away or not. And that leads, of course, to your out there pick, Sigmund. What are you putting your 3 points on?
Well, this is very out there, I think. But I also think that this is going to make a lot of sense should this happen. During WWDC, one of the highlights for me, whilst waiting for my flight back home, was checking out a session on the final day for a motorized accessory that would work for cameras and all sorts of different things, right? And it got me thinking, why would Apple integrate this without there being any true first-party hardware that could integrate with these features? And where I think Apple might take a little bit of control in terms of the story of this event is by really giving MagSafe its moment, right? I do think we will see MagSafe be able to do data transfer, and I think it will be this year that we see that happen. Although obviously nothing is showing up in the code to suggest that. I think now is the time for MagSafe to become something more than just a QI charging park. And so I'm going for a new motorized MagSafe accessory to be announced. Maybe it's a charger, maybe it's something else. We have so many hints in the OS. Standby mode without a real kind of dock for it from Apple. And I think they could do some really cool integrations. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of motorized. I think it could be something that follows you around the home, and I think it could be adjusted. maybe, just maybe, this could integrate with the smaller iPad mini, and therefore there may be some hope on your last pick as well. But that's what I'm going with. I think it's pretty out there. A new motorized MagSafe accessory. In terms of center stage, this is the next step to that.
I love this pick so much because it is pulling together so many different strings that Apple have given us this summer while avoiding any kind of rumors. There's been no articles about anything like this. There's been no leaks about this hardware. But what you've done is you've pulled in a WWDC session, what we know about Standby, what we know about FaceTime on the Apple TV, and put it all together into this really, really awesome pick. I love it so much. A new motorized MagSafe accessory. I think you and I would probably be first in line to pick this up. And 100% I'd be putting this in my living room for FaceTime, not only for just watching TV with people and just chatting, but for Fitness Plus when you're doing your HIIT workouts. Being able to have the iPhone follow you around with that, I think that'd be really cool. So, yeah, this is an awesome pick, Sigmund. Full marks for riskiness and for sleuthing, I would say.
Of course, we'll find out next week who got it all right, who got it wrong, who got it partially right. I'm sure there'll be some discussions on points and wording. Apple's Wonderlust event on September 12th on the TV app in 4K, HDR and spatial audio, available to watch live and shortly afterwards on demand as well, with American Sign Language options and everything else that comes with it. It's going to be a really, really exciting day in a really, really exciting week. But you know what else I'm excited for, Devon?
What's that?
That's our trailers. Let's talk about some trailer talk. This week we got a trailer for The Supermodels, a 4-part documentary event spotlighting the remarkable careers of Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, and Christy Tullington. Really, really cool. This is out very, very soon, September 20th. But the big news is the trailer that dropped literally 60 seconds before we jumped on board to record this episode. Monarch: Legacy of Monsters.
After surviving Godzilla's attack on San Francisco, Kate is shaken yet again by a shocking secret. Amid monstrous threats, she embarks on a globe-trotting adventure to learn the truth about her family and the mysterious organization known as Monarch.
The world is on fire. I decided to do something about it. Hopes, dreams, ambitions. The mission was to protect their world and ours. It's what we wanted Monarch to be. Instead of chasing monsters. If you come with me, you'll know everything, I promise.
This highly anticipated series stars Anna Sawai, Kurt Russell, Wyatt Russell, and Kiersey Clemens. Sigmund, I think you're a little bit of a nerd when it comes to Godzilla history. Can you put this in context for us for how this works within the world of Godzilla and the Monsterverse?
Yeah, this follows on from Godzilla, the 2014 film, which I really, really enjoyed. I felt like it took back the throne after some disappointing outings for Godzilla, especially in the early 2000s, late 90s. It brought to it a realism to the story, focusing more on Monarch, this entity shrouded in mystery, and we learn a little bit more as Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell play the same person, going into the history of their role within Monarch. I want to talk about this in the sense that November 3rd actually marks the 69th anniversary of Godzilla. Not only will we get Monarch in November, but we'll also see the release of a feature called Godzilla -1. For those that don't know the history of Godzilla and its creation as, I guess, a physical manifestation of nuclear anxieties following the atomic bomb, it looks like Monarch and -1 are going to be the perfect pairing for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, which is expected to join Peacock in October, November time as well. So I think we could move away from Barbenheimer and maybe go hashtag Oppenzilla this November. I'm really looking forward to this, Devon. You've seen a trailer yourself. What did you think? And what's your history with Godzilla? Because I'll be honest, I have all of the Godzilla movies going all the way back to the original Gojira and then the US version of that from, I think, 1954.
So this might come as a shock to you, but this is actually my first experience with the MonsterVerse. I've never seen a Godzilla film or King Kong or anything like that. So I don't know all the history. I'm jumping in the middle here. I think I probably will have to watch the 2014 film before Monarch comes out so I can know what we're getting into history-wise as far as the continuity of the show. I've always just, I guess, been an outsider on this series. I'm not really sure why. It wasn't a conscious decision. I've just never gotten into it before. So I'm excited for this as an entry point for me. I think this might be a good way to draw in some new people to the MonsterVerse, as well as appealing to people who are already very invested in it, like yourself. One takeaway from the trailer for me, I'm excited that they actually feature the monster itself in the trailer, because I knew this series was going to focus more on the behind the scenes, the people who are, kind of pulling the strings maybe behind this kind of shadowy world. And so I wasn't sure to what extent it would actually focus on the monsters themselves. So it's cool that there is going to be an inclusion of that as well.
Monarch Legacy of Monsters premieres November 17th on Apple TV+. And I know what people are going to think, but yes, we can expect more from the MonsterVerse along with additional enhancements next year on Apple Vision Pro as well. So lots to look forward to. And all of those dates can be found on our updated calendar, free to subscribe to and formatted for Siri. So every day, if there is a new release, you'll know about it right alongside all of the to-dos for that day. So link in with Godzilla. My Godzilla fascination actually started for a music video, Intergalactic by the Beastie Boys, which was all shot in Japan, is a timeless music video, one that really actually got me into the Beastie Boys back in the late 90s. And then I got to learn about the history of the band and everything they went through the documentary Beastie Boys Story from a few years ago from Spike Jonze. And we've got some good news about this particular documentary for listeners in New York.
Yeah, this is really exciting. To celebrate the unveiling of Beastie Boys Square in Lower East Side of New York City, Apple original film Beastie Boys Story will be showing in theaters for the first time at IFC Center September 8th and 9th. So if you're in the area, be sure to pick up tickets for that. I'm sure that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, Beastie Boys Story originally actually scheduled screenings in, I think, London and Paris, and they were cancelled due to the pandemic. So I really hope, actually, given the many delays that are happening for some tentpole films that we were expecting at the end of this year that have been delayed till like March, April of next year, maybe there's space for some Beastie Boys Story screenings where they were originally scheduled. I'd love it. But of course, there is so much going on across Toronto, New York, London, and LA, and I want to get into them. We've got festival screenings for Apple Originals, starting at the Toronto International Film Festival this past Thursday. There was a screening for Flora and Son, which is a comedy we're really, really looking forward to, coming out later this month. Alongside, on September 13th, the first screening for Fingernails, which, wow, the more I learn about this romantic sci-fi, the more I need to see it as soon as I can. New York Film Festival will host the first airing of The Pigeon Tunnel with multiple screenings starting September 30th, and BFI London Film Festival has a few Apple Originals making their worldwide and European debuts. They are Killers of the Flower Moon on October 7th at the South Bank Centre Royal Festival Hall, in which I will be in attendance, alongside the premieres of Fingernails on October 9th and The Pigeon Tunnel on October 11th. Really, really looking forward to checking those out and giving some early indicators on what I thought during the London Film Festival. Of course, there will be also more screenings available across that week. And finally, AFI Fest in Los Angeles will go ahead. It was a little bit in doubt given everything that's happening in Hollywood right now. It will take place October 25th through 29th, and so you can expect news of possible Apple original screenings over the coming weeks, of course, along with some early impressions on this very podcast.
Very cool. I'm excited you're going to get to go to all those screenings in London. I can't wait to hear about your experience, and I can't wait to see these films myself when they come to Apple TV Plus, and some of them to wider theatrical releases this fall as well. In other news, we got some insight into what's going on with MLS Season Pass as far as subscriber numbers. Antenna reports that MLS Season Pass gained 110,000 new subscribers in one day on July 21st. That, of course, being the day that Lionel Messi played his first match with Inter Miami. Of course, Apple was involved with that deal of bringing him over and getting him involved with the league. It sounds like that seems to have paid off in a pretty big way. The service is expected to currently have around 2 million subscribers. So 110,000 jump in one day. That's a pretty big boost to the service. Of course, we don't know exact numbers or what the expectations were, but at least from my perspective, it seems like that service is going well, especially with getting Messi involved, which is awesome. In production news, Apple this week greenlit the first German Apple original series, dark comedy Where's Wanda? Starring Leah Drinda, Leo Simon, Paulina Rojeep, and Nikita Thompson, Where's Wanda answers the question of how far a person would go to save their child. When the police fail to find their missing daughter, Dido and Carlotta Klatt take matters into their own hands and discover that behind closed doors, none of their neighbors are who they pretend to be.
Wow.
That, it sounds intense for a comedy, but, dark comedy coming out of Germany. This is going to be something new for the service. Personally, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's well above time that we've seen something from Germany. We've had some French originals so far, some from Korea, Japan as well. So it's nice that we're able to diversify and have something for everyone. And of course, accessibility is a big part of not only Apple Originals, but also the Apple TV experience itself. And that leads to some feedback that we got this week from listener Anthony Michael, who got in touch this week on X and asks this question: do you know of any new accessibility options possibly coming to the Apple TV? I would love some form of voice control that could maybe be used through an iPad or iPhone. I can't use the remote anymore, and voice control is great on the iPad and iPhone. So, now, this question was poised just this morning, so I've only had a little bit of time to think about this one, Devon, and I know you've been thinking too. Now, whilst I've reached out to Anthony privately to try and work out a solution for his specific needs, some of the more meaningful benefits of Apple TV come in the form of accessibility features, which we have and continue to cover on Magic Rays of Light. VoiceOver and Siri via HomePod work well, but they do have their limitations, Devon, mainly, as I think we've talked about before, due to the lack of integration with Apple's multi-user integration from big third-party apps like Disney+, Paramount+, Peacock, Max, and others who continue to ignore it, meaning that you can select something to watch via Siri, but you'll meet a wall because of their app's inbuilt profile system, which basically blocks anything from auto-playing, which can be very, very frustrating considering we've now had 2 goes at this integration with no sign in sight just yet of any changes. Now, considering Anthony mentions iPad or iPhone, you may find some luck using remote app shortcuts in the Shortcuts app. There are a number, including opening the app, waking the television, changing subtitle options, changing the user on the Apple TV as well. But there are a few that are lacking. So we haven't actually had any additions to remote app actions for a while. And what I'd imagine would be beneficial are actions for actioning a Siri command, or arrow and select actions for faster navigation. That way, you could set up a fully customizable digital or maybe even physical remote using smart buttons. Something I know personally would be really helpful for the senior family members amongst my household. Now, whilst there aren't any built-in actions, I'd imagine one possible but admittedly janky solution would be to pick up a HomeKit compatible device that can turn IR commands into shortcuts. And there are a couple that have actually just come onto the market recently. The Akara M2 Hub has recently had an update for IR commands, along with the SwitchBot Hub 2, which also is able to convert IR commands. Of course, listeners, if you have any recommendations or tips, do shoot us an email or iMessage to mrolfm@screentimes.net, and we'll leave a link to Anthony's Twitch channel as he tries out other accessibility options throughout the technology world. Really, really cool to have Anthony reach out to us, and hopefully he's going to be checking out all of the releases like we are this week across Apple TV. Where do we start this week, Devon?
I think we have to start with Apple Arcade because Apple put out a really big announcement about their September releases for the service, and these look really cool. So we've got new releases each week, starting on September 8th with My Talking Angela 2 Plus. It's the popular virtual pet game from the makers of Talking Tom and Friends. I believe Talking Tom is already on the service, but now if you want Angela as well, she'll be available September 8th. September 15th, we've got the release of Japanese Rural Life Adventure, a cozy life simulation game presented in a gorgeous and carefully crafted pixel art style. I recommend you check out the listing for this one. We'll link it in the show notes. It just looks gorgeous. September 22nd sees the release of Junk World, a daring tower defense game where players deploy towers, use special units and gadgets, and train amazing heroes to survive the mayhem of a post-apocalyptic tactical battles. This one's rolling out on multiple platforms on September 22nd. I think it's pretty highly anticipated. And if you want to play it on your Apple devices, it's going to be on Apple Arcade. And then September 29th, this is one I know a lot of people are going to be excited about. It's Cyber 007. The only James Bond game on mobile. It's an all-new James Bond experience where players will immerse themselves in a modern twist on a spy adventure game. So a really, really strong September for Apple Arcade. And of course, that doesn't even mention big updates to existing games like Hello Kitty Island Adventure, Jetpack Joyride 2, What the Car, Cityscapes, Angry Birds Reloaded, and more. Just so much going on with Apple Arcade this month. Lots to play, lots of updates to games that you already love. I know I can't wait for the new events in Jetpack Joyride 2. That's kind of been my downtime lately. Check out all of these new games coming to Apple Arcade. We'll link them all in the show notes. You can pre-order them and get ready to play them when they come out.
And as we talk about every time, gaming time is also kind of podcasting time for us as well. When it comes to listening to podcasts, we of course have a new episode of the companion podcast to Foundation with what has been a riveting season 2, especially this episode from this week. Wow, is all I will say for now. Friday also brings about Friday Night Baseball, St. Louis Cardinals at Cincinnati Reds, followed by San Diego Padres at the Houston Astros. MLS Season Pass continues, chock full of games, every game from the MLS. It's going to be really interesting from a Inter Miami point of view to see if they can go from bottom of their division all the way to the top. It looks promising, especially after their result against LA Galaxy just this past week. An incredible goal, yet again, from Lionel Messi. And you can now check out the rest of the season for just $29. That includes the playoffs and everything else that's coming. Yeah, I'm so glad I chose the team I did when I did, Devon.
You made the right call. You didn't even know what was happening, and it makes for a very exciting season for you and your team, and we'll continue to watch that throughout the rest of the season on MLS Season Pass. As far as Apple Originals this week, on Friday we have the premiere of The Changeling, which we spoke about before, and the penultimate episode of Foundation. Let me just echo Sigmund's wow. What a season Foundation is having right now, and of course next week leading into its Season 2 finale. It's just going from strength to strength. On Wednesday, we've got new episodes of Physical, Invasion, and Strange Planet, as well as the premiere of The Morning Show Season 3. I think that's going to be our short highlight for this week. We can't say too much just yet, but I think it's safe to say, Sigmund, we're both excited going into Season 3 of The Morning Show. Is that right?
Oh, I think so. This is actually going to be my 40th birthday evening screening. Now, fans of the show, I think, are going to continue to adore The Morning Show on its return. For everyone else, this season is definitely stronger than Season 2, but also far campier, far more melodramatic. Everyone and John Hamm. We'll talk more about The Morning Show once the embargo lifts, which just so happens to be on the day of its Season 3 premiere. We also have some extras this week to delve into, starting with the latest addition to the Apple Music Live series.
Yes, this edition features Dominic Fike live from Atlanta. This one kind of just came out of nowhere. I think they announced it like the day before or something, but it's really exciting. A lot of people are fans of his from the show Euphoria. He had an original song for the series that got quite a bit of traction, kind of put him in the limelight, and now you can see a full show of his right now on Apple Music Live in the TV app.
Very cool. One extra that I thought was interesting, given its release, was the 8-hour version of the Severance theme song on YouTube, as posted by Apple TV. It just so happened to coincide with everyone finally getting their vinyl. They are incredible and are limited in numbers. So if you're a fan of the series and the soundtrack, even if you don't have a record player, I highly suggest picking it up from Mondo Shop. We'll leave a link in the show notes. Finally, we got some more first look photos from Vanity Fair for a series that I know you're looking forward to. I think it's releasing cleverly to coincide with the Marvels from Disney and Marvel. Tell me about this.
So Brie Larson stars, of course, in Lessons in Chemistry. We haven't seen a full trailer yet for the series, but we do have a really good look at what we can expect from Vanity Fair in these photos. So we'll link those in the show notes so we can all get a little more excited. Of course, this is a period piece, so it's cool to kind of see some of the design choices they make there. It's always fun to kind of jump into a different time, and this will just kind of help you get in the mood for that. We've already had a lot of predictions in this episode, Sigmund, but we're going to continue that theme one last time with our short recap of the Afterparty. Of course, you and I got together at the beginning of Season 2 and made our predictions for who we thought the killer might be. Can you remind me what your prediction was?
Yes, I predicted the suave British Jack Whitehall as Sebastian, as the killer, because I found him quite conniving. I think we got that right. And it turns out, I think there was a little bit of a link, because remind me of who you had predicted, because I think both of our picks ended up being in somewhat cahoots.
Yes. I chose Isabel based on some of her actions in the first episode. I thought that she might be the one to have possibly accidentally killed Edgar. And I wasn't right, obviously, but there was a point in the season where she admitted that she believed she was the one who killed Edgar. Very interesting episode, Isabel. Her story, wow. What a journey that she went on. So I guess neither of us were completely right, which seems to be a tradition with seasons of the Afterparty. You and I don't seem to nail it. Of course, the week before the finale, I had a conversation with our friend Jonathan Reed, who, if you want to watch the Afterparty and enjoy it, don't talk to Jonathan about his theories because the guy just nails them, and he got it completely right.
Yeah, you know, this guy, always in the DMs of Chris Miller and Phil Lord, so, you know, maybe he had a heads up.
No.
I tell you what, you say you had a close call. I feel like I had a close call right on that final episode where it looked like, just for a moment, I think 15 minutes from the end, that it could have been Zoe. And I thought, oh no, I was a year early. But I'm glad I didn't pin it on her yet again, because this season, which has been very varied, I will say, it wasn't a season that gelled as well with me personally. Some of the comedy, some of the genres that I didn't have as much connection to as I did in the first season. And maybe because of how vast the story was, whereas everything really just kind of took place in one setting the first time. That said, I enjoyed the performances. Paul Walter Hauser, again, such a strong comedic performance from him. And I enjoyed the ending. Can we talk about the ending? Obviously, spoilers. You should have known that before this chapter. If not, whoops.
Well, of course, we find out that Funkle Ulysses is the one who killed Edgar by mistake, trying to kill Fang, his brother, so that he could be with his sister-in-law. Whole backstory there. There were clues along the way that I personally missed, I think, that made it pretty clear that it was him. But I'm actually glad that he's the one who ended up being the one who did it, because part of my experience with the ending of season 1 is I was sad because it was like my favorite character who did it. And, I was disappointed that it was someone I was invested in. Ulysses is not a character I connected with as much. I don't think he's as likable, which I think maybe contributes more to more of a happy ending for season 2, which I appreciate. Of course, we've got Zoe and Anik having their romantic happy ending, and Zoe's family coming to accept Anik and really get on board with their relationship, which is awesome. And then, of course, Detective Danner has to have her ending as well, where she gets to adapt the story of the first season of the Afterparty into a feature film featuring some cool cameos that I didn't know were coming anyway, and I was surprised by. Now, I will say the ending got me a little bit, because I have to imagine with the success of the Afterparty that they're gearing up for a season 3. I fully expected the end of season 2 to feature someone dying on set of Detective Danner's film. I still think season 3 could be the wrap party of her film. I think that'd be a great setting for another murder and another murder mystery. But that's just my prediction. But I agree with you. I thought the ending of season 2 was great. I love that it ends on a happy note, because the whole thing's kind of dark and it's about murder and all these people with the really dark motives. But then, at the end of the day, people are together and happy, and obviously the person responsible is held responsible for what they did.
Season 3, another opportunity maybe to bring back Channing Tatum, which I'm really, really hopeful for. Sad that he wasn't included on this season. And I think this season maybe took a little bit of a detour based on what we heard about the original concept for season 2. That said, you can check out the whole of season 1 and season 2 of the Afterparty right now across all of your screens on Apple TV+. Such a cool way to end the episode this week. But of course, before that, we have our up next picks from across the Apple TV app. What have you got for us this week, Devon?
Well, my pick has to be Ahsoka, the new Star Wars series streaming on Disney+, of course, starring Rosario Dawson as the titular character. Now, if you're a fan of The Mandalorian, you've already met Ahsoka, because she was in season 2 of The Mandalorian to intro her into this world. They're kind of setting up like a Mando-verse on Disney Plus that's building up to a bigger storyline, is what we've been told. But what I love about this series is it's also a continuation of some of the animated series in the Star Wars universe that for a lot of people, honestly, really are Star Wars. So starting with the Clone Wars, Ahsoka was introduced as a Jedi Padawan to Anakin Skywalker. We get to follow her journey throughout the several seasons of the Clone Wars up to season 7. Then she appeared in the animated series Star Wars Rebels, which this series is almost a sequel to. It's live action, it's not animated, but you're seeing several characters from Star Wars Rebels come in on Ahsoka, finishing up some of the storylines that didn't get wrapped up there. It's really cool to see Dave Filoni, who has been such a force behind the creativity of Star Wars in the animated world, get to bring these characters to live action. He's directing several of the episodes this season. In fact, episode 5, which comes out this week, is actually going to be released in theaters in select cities.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, nowhere near me, so I'm not able to go see it on the big screen. The series is really strong. It's hitting its midpoint. This past week's episode had everyone chattering about it. And if that theatrical release is any indication, episode 5 is going to be huge as well. So If you grew up watching Clone Wars and you enjoyed seeing Ahsoka's journey, this is a continuation of that. It's awesome to see in live action. It adapts perfectly, and it's really cool to see. Or if you're a fan of The Mandalorian, this is also within that world too. So this is hitting a lot of different points within Star Wars fandom, and I highly recommend it. Ahsoka, streaming now on Disney+.
I have to get back into Star Wars and the original series. I watched The Mandalorians, but I've missed the other original series that have come from that universe on Disney+. So maybe if there's enough time by the end of the year, I will catch up fully. But I'm really, really excited for that. My pick this week is Strays from Josh Greenbaum and starring Will Forte alongside the voices of Will Ferrell, Jamie Foxx, and Central Park's Josh Gad, amongst others. This can only be described, Devon, as what would happen if you turned Homeward Bound into an adult comedy. And so I thought this was maybe one that you could get away with Noah. This is about a plucky pup called Reggie who thinks his owner Doug, played by Will Forte, is playing an extreme game of fetch. But it isn't until he meets Bug, played by Jamie Foxx, a streetwise stray, that Reggie realises his miserable master intentionally abandoned him in the big city. With two more pooches adding fuel to his furry fire, Reggie goes from cute to cunning as he and Bug concoct a crazy scheme to get back to Doug and give him a big bite between his legs. Now, I saw the trailer and initially rolled my eyes, but I've got to tell you, Devon, whilst this may not be on the Mount Rushmore of cinematic marvels, if you're going into this with the intention of having a good, hearty laugh, I think you're in for a really, really fun time on this. Also, it should be mentioned, one of the producers involved, Chris Miller, of course, of the Afterparty fame. So, yes, Strays, available in the TV app for rental or for premium purchase, because it is still currently in cinemas as well. So this may be one that you gather the family round, get everyone to chip in, and then keep. I think you'll have a good laugh. I look forward to hearing what you think about this in the weeks or months to come, Devon, because of course Devon will be back full time in just a few episodes time. In the meantime, we'll have some guests and maybe a slight change in format until mid-October. Of course, Devon, once again, wishing you and your family well until you come back. Is there anything you wanted to say? And before you go again, how can everyone contact you and me and the show until the next episode?
Well, I want to say one more time, thank you again to everyone for the love, support, and congratulations. It means the world to me and my family. And also thank you to everyone for giving me a little bit of time to spend with the family before I come back. I'm excited to get back into the podcast full time before too long. As always, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, where you can leave us a rating and review. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, or you can email the show or send us an iMessage to mrolfm@screentimes.net.
Magic Rays of Light will be back next week to recap Apple's event and the world of Apple TV. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and...
Sigmund, cover your ears for a second. Everybody be sure to wish Sigmund a happy birthday on Wednesday and send him your favorite wrestling gif as a birthday present.
Happy, happy birthday to you. Happy, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.